Hey, good evening. Monday night here from the great Northeast United States of America. I've got Josh Tovar over here in the Southwest, and I'm Dean Packard. I'm the principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts, and it's great to have you here on a Sunday night. You know, Sunday nights are all about getting better together, and we've had a great run lately of bringing some amazing personalities in the field of education that are just filling toolboxes for everybody. And it's so cool. It doesn't matter if you're in Alaska or Hawaii or Maine to North Dakota or South Dakota or even wherever. Please join us. Retweet this stuff out. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. And we're here to make you just a little bit better. We're not going to disappoint tonight. So first and foremost, happy Easter to everybody out there as well. Hope you had a great day if it's a holiday that you celebrate. And, Sundays are always the beginning of the week as far as I'm concerned. Josh, how are you? Josh, let me kick it over to you for a second just to say hello. What do you think about that, Josh?
I love it, Dean. I love it. You stuck in South Dakota. I love it there.
I did that for you, man. I did it for you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Josh Tovar, Pro Principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garland ISD, Garland, USA. Ready to hear rock and roll on Easter. Happy Easter to everybody, but also remember it's Passover. Greetings to everybody celebrating Passover and Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim brothers as we're going through the gamut of 'tis the season of celebration during this time. And you know what? We have PD tomorrow, Dean. Spend the whole weekend, Good Friday in my office, yesterday in my office, today in my office. Finished and prepped it because that goes with the chair that we chose to sit on. Sure. Because you know what? I don't know about you, Dean, but when I go to PDs, I don't like to be talked to from a PowerPoint. I don't like for people to be being the sage on the stage. I want something that's relevant and engaging to me that I could use when I take back. So that's always our focus on our PDs. And I know you guys you just finished spring break, correct?
I'd like to tell you that's correct, Josh, but you're a little behind. We're about a week away before we start. We start that great old Massachusetts MCAS testing tomorrow morning. So again, our week's going to be filled with standardized tests, unfortunately, but part of our bailiwick. So
yeah, and that's where we're going right now in regards to our star. We call it star EOC, depending on what grade level. But you know what? The whole ultimate goal is that's why we had this awesome guest today. You follow him on social media on the different social platforms. This guy is on fire, as Principal Capella says. He's on fire, bringing the heat. And you know what? I'm looking forward to that climate and culture conversation we're going to have here on the flagship show of Unlock the Middle with our awesome guest, Vernon. Welcome to the show.
I'll tell you what, let's bring Vernon in. There he is. First and foremost, I love the hat. The hat is where my focus went right away. The smile was number 2. The depth is going to be number 3. So, Vernon, welcome to our show, man. It's a pleasure to have you here. We know you've left your mark at a lot of different places. You are just making a difference. And as Josh said, you're on fire. So I'm going to get right to it, man. Tell the audience a little bit about your origin, your story, and the different roles you've had as you served in education as you've gotten to where you are today. And first, welcome. Let's say welcome. Welcome first.
Well, thank you very much so for the welcome. And wow, let me just go ahead and start out by saying, and of course, we'll talk about this as we get off into the show. I just want to express gratitude. Gratitude, first of all, for everyone who may be watching this live, for those that will watch this later on replay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And one of the things I understand and I know is that, you know what, people can spend their time doing anything. So anytime that people spend watching this, I am grateful and I am humbled and honored to be in this space with you all. The name is Vernon Wright. As I tell people, unless somebody changed it on the birth certificate and they didn't tell me, across all socials, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, what have you. It's @ the Wright, WRIGHT, leader, LEADER, and started out many, many, many moons ago in this very small city named Dallas. Just being a little facetious there with you all. Small city, right? Just a little small. And I tell people that it's really interesting because, when you start off in Dallas, everything is like really huge, right? And so I remember, because I was a job changer originally, when I got out of school, I went into the corporate world. And it was interesting because we have this program, of course, called Alternative Certification down here in Texas. And our cadre, our cohort, if you will, was over 200 people. So there were over 200 of us that were going through alternative certification together. And so that was great. Really interesting. And I mentioned this when I was on the podcast with George Couros and Dave Burgess and some other folks that part of my origin story, as we would call it, is that I got into education and I really didn't have any plans to stay more than maybe about 2 or 3 years until I found out what I wanted to do when I quote unquote grew up, right? And found out that, you know what, this might be part of my life's calling. Started out as a teacher. About 2 or 3 years later, had some people approach me and say, "Hey, have you thought about anything beyond that?" No, not really. For those of you that are 80s music fans that remember this band called The Flock of Seagulls, they used to have have a song called Iran. And I think at one point during my life, that was my theme song when people came to me about leadership. But how many of you know that, God places people in your life that are angels? And I had several of those. And many of them have since retired from the business. But I had a few of them that said, no, we're just not going to stay at this classroom level stuff. There's something you can do beyond that. And that led me into being a teacher leader. And then later on, led me into going back to school. Shout out to American College of Education. Awesome folks there. ace.edu. Check it out. And went back to school and got into being an admin intern, campus administrator, part of a campus administrator team. And then later on, went into being part of district level support. Now, quick thing I want to say to this and speak to this is simply this thing, right? And folks, those of you that are watching live, certainly not to come into this space without being prepared to take copious notes. And so this is a great place for you to go ahead and take notes. For those watching replay, you can pause this and go get something to take notes with. And it's simply this: wherever you're at right now with whatever you have, take action. Okay. And so what I did in each one of those spots was I took action. Now, I didn't know everything from A to Z, but I took action. And so for someone who is watching this, many people, I would presume, um, if we shut off the podcast right now, which we won't, right? Um, you've received confirmation that whatever it is that you're going through or whatever it is you're doing in your life, the next step is going to be taking action. And so I started doing that. Was a host of an online leadership show by this little small company called Disrupt Ed TV. Shout out to Rich Allen. And met some great folks along the way, like I said, like George Couros, Dave Burgess, the Robs, Evan Robb, Laura Robb, and some other great folks along the way. And lo and behold, guess what, folks? A few years down the road, it had led me to the presence of two great gentlemen that I am on the screen with now.
Way too kind, man. Eloquently stated from start to finish right there. Josh, we done? That was fantastic.
I think that's it. Here, mic drop. We'll see you later.
Boom.
For the show we've had on. Thank you very much. Principal
Smooth. We're just beginning, man. We're not done. We're just
Cafelli
beginning.
right there.
Principal
All right.
Capella, saludos, jefe.
Principal
Well-
Cafelli, salute to you, sir. I will tell you guys, and of course, he probably doesn't want me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. What a great, great, great gentleman he is. And I will tell you, if folks ever doubt the authenticity of Principal Cafelli, I remember him posting on social media where he was sleeping in an airport so he could go ahead and make his commitment to speaking at the upcoming convention. I believe that was ASCD recently. And what a great gentleman. And I thank you, sir. Salute to you for your service and what you're doing out there with the people. And one of the things that, of course, I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit that I share with leaders, but I'll share it here since Principal Cafelli is here because he models it so well. And one of the things that I share with leaders when I coach with them and have these dialogues with them simply is this: you cannot delegate your authenticity. Let me go ahead and repeat that again, folks. And for some people right there, that's a heavy hitter right there in and of itself. And I want to say that again, because, when you get into leadership, you have a lot of people say, well, delegate this, delegate that. Folks, you cannot delegate your authenticity. So I can't say, hey, the both of you guys that are here on the screen with me, if you guys would just go ahead and go to said event or said meeting, and if you'll just be authentic for me, I appreciate that. Let me know how it goes. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, folks. So Principal Cafelli is real and authentic, and shout out to him. He has made a career and a lifetime over that.
He's changed a lot of lives. There's no doubt about it. And he's led a lot of pathways for people. I love it. That's sorry, Josh.
As we know, in his words, he don't fake the funk. because he don't want his nose to grow. All right.
Absolutely.
That's why we were very fortunate to work with him in the Fantastic Four. But you know what, Vernon? Let me ask you. You said that today on the day where he gave his only begotten son for us, and today he rose. Let me ask you. You said that he places you where you're supposed to be, right? That
Absolutely.
he places things, messages, people in front of you. So let me ask you something. Who inspired you to get into the field? Who currently inspires you? Who's the role model for you in this beautiful field? The best profession, the profession in the world that creates all the other professions. Who inspires you?
Absolutely. Well, I would tell you folks that the list is long. So, I mean, I don't necessarily want to go through and start naming specific names because someone may feel offended that they were left out. And as the old folks used to say when I was coming up, charge it to my head, not to my heart. But I will say this several influences within education. Of course, Principal Kafele is one of them. He's here on the show, so I will go ahead and mention him. But also, too, that's which some people may not know. Those that know me well know this. Several influences outside of education. And is this a? I don't want to break any show rules. Is this a good point for me to go ahead and drop a pro tip?
Do anything
You know,
you need
you
to do.
you want to go ahead and make sure you're following show rules. So I will say this again because I mentioned, right? Didn't we warn them, guys, that you don't come into this space without being ready to take copious notes. So of course, Principal Kafele is here, and of course, he's written a lot of great things. And so go ahead and obviously connect with his materials. I would also say this too, which is not within education, but it has proved to be very, very valuable to me over the years. And it's a book that I highly recommend. Of course, it is in paperback. If you're an audiobook fan, which I'm an audiobook person myself, and have been with audible.com for several years, a great book for you to get is The Five Levels of Leadership from John C. Maxwell. Really, I could say anything from John C. Maxwell would be great, but that is one of my favorites is the five levels of leadership. And I will tell you this, right? I know we have other things that we want to talk about. Certainly we want to go ahead and address those, but that is one of the major influences in my life. Second influence, right? A second thing that people can reach out to and they can connect with is this, right? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm going to mention a couple of things here because I know that we probably want to go and touch on this a little bit later. Is Drive by Daniel Pink, Pink. Okay. And here's what that book did for me many, many years. Of course, that book has been out for so many different years, for so many years, and in so many different iterations, different languages, and what have you. But really, what that book taught me was this is that what we think is motivating or inspiring to someone may not necessarily be the case. And of course, he goes deep into that in terms of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And so, if you're a person, and I know that I coach with people in consulting work that I do from time to time, that say, you know what, Vernon, man, I am looking to go ahead and really get that buy-in from my team. I highly recommend that book, Drive. Let me also go ahead and say this, and of course, my amigo from Texas mentioned this a few minutes ago. Obviously, for those that are here in Texas, and of course, I know that there's some similarities from state to state, but we have this thing called T-tests, T-TESS, right? Which is how we go ahead and we appraise teachers, we appraise educators. And I know that before that, we had this system called PDOS, and that's when I was a PDOS appraiser. And of course, have been a T-test appraiser after that as well. And so, one of the things I want to mention is this: out of the four domains in T-test, one of the four domains is all about classroom culture. Now, you might ask, well, Vernon, why is that important, right? Well, it's important, obviously, because, learning takes place in an environment. But the bigger point that's very subtle, but it's very significant, great place to take notes, folks. I'm ready to go ahead and drop a couple of things here, right? If it's important for kids, for us to be mindful of the learning environment that kids are in, isn't it important for us to be mindful of the learning environment that adults are in? As they would say, the young folks would, asking for a friend, right? So let's be mindful of that. And of course, you mentioned PD. We did just a few minutes ago, upcoming PD. We want to be mindful of that, which is one of the reasons why I just absolutely made this commitment. Funny story within a story that years ago I said, if I am ever in a position years down the road, and of course I am now, very grateful and humble to be, where I stand up in front of people and talk, I will not read off of PowerPoints word by word. I did not enjoy that. But I also want to bring in another point, which really goes to this environment and culture piece, which is SEL, social emotional learning. And remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago that you cannot delegate your authority. So if you're a leader right now and you're watching this, listening to this, whether it's live, whether it's on replay, what have you, of course, obviously, thank you for being here in this space with us. But let me also go ahead and say this. Um, Obviously, I'm a fan of formal academic learning, right? Bachelor's degree, master's degree. Um, but let me also say this too. Although we are people that um, honor formal learning, here's what we also have to do. And let me go ahead and say this real quick, folks. I'm almost reminded of when Sears had that tagline or that ad campaign many years ago about get in touch with your softer side at Sears, which is the social emotional learning piece. Now, again, no matter what you do in terms of formal academic learning, it cannot take place for that SEL piece. So I'm going to drop one thing here real quick and we'll go ahead and we'll move on. When I've gone to different conferences and I've spoken, I've dropped what I call the two C's. The two C's. And people say, wow, Vernon, what are the two C's? And I've said simply, it's this: culture and curriculum. And in my experiences, I don't pretend to know of all of the experiences that have ever happened in life. I certainly don't pretend to know that. But over my almost 2 decades in the business, from what I have experienced, this is what I have seen in terms of my experiential learning. When people have ran away from the culture piece and addressing that, and they've doubled down on curriculum, every single time it has failed. Okay. So we affirm PLCs, we affirm looking at the standards, we affirm doing all of those things that are part of curriculum, but there is no curriculum that can substitute for culture, right? So let me just say that again: two C's: curriculum, culture. So there's a quick litmus test for you right now when you get through watching this to think about, where am I at in my building, in my region, in my state, whatever it is, my organization, with curriculum and culture. So just want to drop that in there. I always want to provide value and add value for folks that are watching and listening.
Well, curriculum and culture are two huge, huge components of any successful organization. There's no doubt about it. So, thank you for actually, especially from the educational standpoint of things here, what you teach is extremely important. And how people feel about where they're at and how they are connecting with their learning is the single most second part of understanding a really good school. So, listen, you've risen through the journey of education into a leadership role, and now you're marketing, and now you're out there, and you are being that lead person. Let's talk about that. Effective leadership. I mean, you use social media, you use other platforms at this point in time. What is effective leadership to you, and how have you seen that evolve over time? Because I'll tell you what, as a leadership role, just like a teacher, we're evolving every day. We're looking to get better. We're not sitting stagnant. The people who are sitting stagnant just don't grow. Our job is to grow and evolve and meet kids and people where they're at. So let me kick that over to you for a second, and let's hear your viewpoints.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and drop another little pro tip here, folks. If you are taking notes, which you should be, because, when you come into a space which I'm so humbled and honored to be in with two great minds, and Principal Kafele is here with us as well, and that's another great mind. Getting ready to drop a little pro tip for you here. Okay. Now, before I drop the pro tip, let me go ahead and say this, folks. Don't be fooled by what some people would call smoke and mirrors, or what I call the cognitive head fake. Okay. Now, I say that because what I'm getting ready to go ahead and share with you is very simple. I would presume that everyone watching this, listening to this, if they're listening to it instead of watching it, can count to two. Okay. Everybody can count to two. One, two. One, two. And one more time for those keeping score at home. One, two. All right. So two steps in leadership. And I will tell you this, here's a litmus test, right? Before I give you the two steps, I want you to think about when I do give them to you, every single person that you feel has been a great leader for you. I want you to go back and back test these two steps I'm getting ready to give you with each of those leaders. All right. Two steps are this, and you can self assess yourself as well with these two. The number one thing is build trust, folks. Number one is build trust. Build trust. Show me someone who was a great leader and didn't build trust, and I'm going to have a lot of questions for you about how they became a great leader. Okay. The second thing is add value. And I'm going to tell you this, folks, and those that have been clients of mine, those that I have worked with privately in consulting and in other roles, know this. One of the first things I tell people is this: in order to get themselves centered, build trust, add value, and you can build a career on that. Now, we want to make it simple. Why do we want to make it simple when we talk, especially about things like leadership? Because as I explained to someone the other day, I don't want to make the barriers to entry more difficult, more complex, or higher. I don't want that, right? I want to make it easier for people to engage and be in the process. So notice what I did, folks. Now, when I go and I do speaking engagements, I tell people I'm in two roles, right? The two roles I'm in is number one, I'm a speaker, I'm sharing information, right? But number two, I'm modeling. Okay. Now, notice what I did. I gave you two steps. Everyone can count to two. One, two. So that's not overburdensome. That is not something that we can't go ahead and work with. It's simple. But also, what did I do? I model that. Okay. And then I also did what else? I told you how you could take that and then further your career and your impact with humankind beyond that. So number one, build trust. How do you do that, Vernon? Well, it's a very subtle thing, but a significant thing we talked about earlier. You cannot delegate your authenticity. If you missed that from before, great place to go ahead and take notes on that. You cannot delegate your authenticity. I will tell you a story within a story. I was working in a situation one time, went to a different place and showed up there to kind of see what was going on. And some people were like, well, wow, Mr. Wright is here. What's going on? And so, I just want to see kind of what's going on or whatever. And I had some of the staff members look at me and they said, Mr. Wright, we already know what's going on. And I said, oh, do you? And they said, yeah. And they said, this has been several years ago. They said, but it was a key learning lesson for me. They said, we already know what's happening. We're just waiting to see what the leader and other people are going to say about what happened. Because how those other stakeholders in the process respond will let us know if they can be trusted. So let me say this out here, folks. Okay. That's why we would call this heart work. Like my friend, Dr. Basil Moran says, heart work. Okay. So this is a matter of the heart. All right. Now, the second thing is to add value. Okay. Now, I want to say this. If you are a person that is always adding value, what people are going to eventually say is this, and this is the reputation you'll get. They'll say, you know what? Every time I'm around Dean, man, he always helps me with stuff. Man, that's great. Every time I'm around Josh, man, he always helps me out with stuff. Man, he always comes through with just the answer I need at the right place at the right time. Well, people talk to people. Did you guys know that? Folks that are listening, people talk to people, right? So guess what? Exactly. So guess what happens? That becomes your rep. You become the person, your rep becomes the person everyone else can go to when they hit a standstill, when they hit a long jam, when they hit the wall in terms of their thinking. Go to Dean, go to Josh. They can help you. They've got great ideas. So that's how you make, if you're figuring out, how can I make myself at this point in my career, whether you're at the first part of your career, whether you're at the midpoint of your career, maybe you're towards the more mature end of your career and you're thinking about, how can I add value and have others see that I am adding value? And I simply will say this. I'll go ahead and enter in a Zig Ziglar quote. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have it memorized, but Zig Ziglar, great influence. You guys had asked me about that earlier. I guess I'm naming an influence there. And he basically said this: you can have everything in life if you want, if you just help enough other people get what they want. And so, what does that entail, Vernon? That entails finding out about people, talk to people. And can I tell you something, folks? I, I was speaking, and I want to throw a shout out to Glenn Robbins and Rich Allen and Tom Murray, because I met those guys in 2019 up in New Jersey. So I was speaking at a conference up in New Jersey back then in 2019. And one of the things that I shared, did a leadership minute with Tom Murray, phenomenal experience, and it was great. But I asked the three big questions. Another great place to take notes, folks. I told you we were going to add value. We were going to drop pro tips. And here's another little pro tip for you to use. So over the years, when I've gone to different places, I make it a point to try to talk to everyone involved in the education process. Staff members, leadership, support staff, what have you, right? And one of the things that I have often asked folks is the three questions. Okay. Number one, what is it right now that you're working on that you are most passionate about in your life? What is it right now that you're working on that excites you? That's question number one. Question number two, why do you feel that that is important in terms of how it will affect your immediate organization, whether that's your team, whether that's your school, whether that's your district, what have you? Third question, how do you feel? How do you see? How do you think that that impact will affect whatever the organizations are on a larger scale? Some people will call that this thing called the ripple effect. Okay. Now, I want to go ahead and ask you this again. Great place for you to take notes and to think about in retrospect, right? When is the last time that someone came up to you and asked you, what are you working on right now that you're absolutely passionate about, that gets you to wake up early, gets you to stay up late, and you don't get paid anything to do that, but you are absolutely, as W. Clement Stone said, it has become your magnificent obsession? When is the last time somebody asked you that? And so for a lot of us, we've never really experienced that. And so that's a great way to connect with somebody. So I'll tell you a quick little story. The first time years ago when I asked a few people this, the first few people, right, they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wright, is this a trick question? I said, no, it's not a trick question. And they're like, are you trying to get something from me? No, I'm not. I'm just curious. Just want to know.
Josh?
I just got carried away. I'm sorry. I was
waiting for the answer. Is it a trick question? No, it's not a trick question.
Right. Look, man. You see, you got me. I was like that snake that you
mesmerized. He was caught in the middle.
Hey, brother, let me tell you. Just everything that you said right now is on point. You know, right now you're with a choir, but you know, people need to hear you out there, because more often than not, there's people that need to hear your message. You know, we brought on a lot of people. Dean has brought on tons of people, and Chris, in regards to enhancing the tool chest, because there's a lot of issues going on in public education right now. So specifically right now, in your sphere of influence, what are you doing? How are you helping leaders? You mentioned conferences. You mentioned different podcasts. What other avenues are you taking to spread this message out there? Because you know what? The best gift, my superintendent Awesome said, the best gift I could ever give a school is a great principal. That's the best gift I could ever give them. And so what are you doing to enhance that knowledge of all those leaders?
Yeah, phenomenal question. And another great place to take notes. This is what I found out through experiential learning, and obviously through having great mentors. And obviously, that is a great segue to lead me into what I'm going to go ahead and talk about as one of the first points. And it's about mentorship. And I want to say this, folks. This is what I say often to people and have over the years. Scores get better when instruction gets better. Okay. Scores get better when instruction gets better. Well, people often ask me and have for years, well, how does instruction get better, Mr. Wright? Well, instruction gets better when we talk explicitly about certain specific instructional moves that educators can make. Okay. Well, what does that involve then? That involves actually talking to people, right? And guess what? It's not just a one and done. We have to go ahead and talk to people consistently over time, because what are we also doing when we are talking about specifics? Here's a great point right here. And this is about long lasting impact. And I've shared this many, many times with people over the years. I'm not only teaching and speaking to specifics, I'm building confidence, building confidence, building confidence. Now, so why do I say that? Because I am a huge believer and have been a huge benefactor of the power of mentors. So I'm a huge believer in mentorship. So I often say this: if someone comes to me and says, "Man, Vernon, I'm a great leader. I'm just the best leader. Man, you haven't seen a leader like me." One of the first questions I ask them is this. I'm going to go ahead and throw out a secret little question I've used over the years. If you guys promise not to share it with anybody, okay? All right, we just lower and start whispering. And it's simply this: who are you mentoring right now? And the reason why I ask that question, folks, is this: I often say each one mentor one, because whatever change we want to see happen and to be sustained over time, it typically involves people, right? But people not only have to be taught how to do specific things, their confidence has to be built on how to do that. Now, here's what I do. All right. Go ahead and share this with you all. I personally, because I say this, there's different uh, R&B, hip hop, rap groups out there, and other people who've simply said, uh, "Walk it like I talk it." Okay, so I often say this: if someone comes to tell you to do certain specific things, one of the first things you should ask them is, "When are you going to go ahead and model that for me?" So what I often focus on saying is this: I hold myself to this standard. I don't recommend or say anything to anyone that I haven't done myself, and to another level that I haven't done with some level of success. And I'll say this: I've often said to people, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Now, so what's my contribution to that? Getting back around to your question, my contribution is to this, and I'm going to speak to a few things here very quickly. Number one, I know that in our profession, we have an underrepresentation of Black male educators. So what I do is I speak to our black and brown educators to get them involved in the profession. Okay. Get them involved in the profession. So what does that mean, Vernon? That means I mentor a lot of, guess what? Brown and black males. Now, let me also go ahead and make another connection for you with regard to disciplinary data for the state of Texas. Well, guess who two of the most disproportionately disciplined demographic groups are in the state of Texas? Brown and black males. Now, we can continue to be punitive, or we can truly be, as some people would say, restorative. Well, what does that mean? We've got to make a connection. We've got to spend time with our young black and brown males that are out there, because, folks, you can have a student code of conduct, but there are some things that mentoring can do that a student code of conduct cannot. And for those of you that are out there that are in those disciplinary positions, I want to go ahead and say this: as someone who used to be a disciplinarian for 1,300 students, have to tell you about that story sometime, and having had some really wild stories. Okay, being the main disciplinary guy for 1,300 students on a campus. But we have to reach out and build those bridges. Okay, next. So we have to really focus on the fundamentals. Now, I want to ask you guys a quick question a mentor asked me many years ago, right? So, quick recap. The first thing I mentioned is mentoring. Each one, mentor one. That's how we increase the impact. Okay. Now, second thing is this. A mentor asked me this years ago: when you're watching the World Series, Super Bowl, Wimbledon, the Masters, like, that's on this weekend with golf. What do you guys see? Let me ask the both of you, as a mentor asked me years ago. What do you see when you're seeing all of these athletes in those arenas? What do you see in those athletes?
I see myself somebody that began a passion since early youth and were cheered by not only the coaches, by the parents, showing the love and engagement by taking them to practice on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. More often than not, the parents being there, taking the whole team Gatorades and chips since they were little, and engaging a seed and planting that seed and harvesting that seed for success to where now they're making millions. But that was not at the beginning. At the beginning, went through a lot of disappointment, a lot of them sitting on the bench, a lot of those issues along the way that led them to the future, which was success and failures. And in the end, that kid felt the love and the support of everybody around him. And the more he felt the love and support, or she felt the love and support, they aspired to, as the girl from LSU said, the ring.
Let me go ahead and say this now. Just asking for people out in the audience, clarifying it. It sounds kind of like you're speaking to social emotional learning. Asking for a friend, right?
Yeah,
What do you
all the
say,
score
Dean?
of everything. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Dean?
I'm thinking what I see is people who have gone through a journey of ups and downs, like Josh said, but more
Hmm.
importantly, there's a level of confidence at this point in time that has allowed them to get to a high level of celebratory moments within their field. And again, life is like that. Life is filled with ups and downs and bumps and bruises. And our job as leaders is to ensure that we create roadmaps for everybody to be successful. So, yeah, as I'm watching all that play out, that's what I see. I mean, again, you don't know what's around the corner, but what you do know is that people who are in leadership have an obligation to help plant those seeds and water those seeds for you so they can grow and be successful. And again, it takes a village. There's no doubt about it.
Now, let me say this here real quick, both of you guys. That's why I'm so humble and honored to be in this space. You guys must have been Rhodes Scholars when you were in school. I mean, you guys are awesome, man.
I
You guys
learned it
are
from
great.
that guy. The elderly showed me.
Come on, man.
you
Come on.
guys are great, man.
Come
So I want to
on.
say this: a few different things. Number one, if you're taking notes, great place to take notes, right? In terms of impact and how we go ahead and we create change, because we create change one person at a time, each one mentor one. That was from the first section. So the first thing is this: SEL, folks. We said it before. We're going to say it again. Yeah, I almost want to go ahead and say that all roads lead back to social emotional learning. So number one, SEL, there's mentorship. What you guys have mentioned repeatedly is mentorship, resiliency, right? Let me also go ahead and say this, a couple of other things. Notice that great leaders, whether they're in education, in business, in sports, what have you, notice they have the ability to focus. Right? They have the ability to focus. So even when other people are not focused, they get off track, they get discouraged for whatever the different things are. Notice the coach has the ability not only to focus for themselves, but to focus others. Now, let's go ahead and take that focus to two other things. That means that the coach at some point has to have vision. Now, let me say this for leaders that are out there, right? Leaders that are watching us. And again, thank you all for spending time with us, whether this is live or whether you're watching on replay. Um, if a leader doesn't have the vision, then how can their organization have vision? Just asking for a friend, right? Asking for a friend. As I believe the young folks say in tech speak, IGS, I'm just saying. Okay. The next thing is this, right? If you're taking notes, great place to take notes. The fundamentals. And that's what a mentor shared with me so many years ago when he asked me that question about the Super Bowl, the World Series, Wimbledon, the Masters. I mean, you name whatever the thing is that is the peak, the zenith, the pinnacle of whatever that sport is at the highest levels on a worldwide basis. He told me, he said, Vernon, you are seeing, and a great place to take notes, folks. He said, you are seeing 4 words, masters of the fundamentals. Let me say that again, folks. Masters of the fundamentals, 4 words, masters of the fundamentals. And I said, wow, explain that to me. And he said, well, you know what, Vernon, everybody wants to go ahead and do the advanced stuff, but have they really mastered the basic stuff? Just want to go ahead and repeat that. Asking for a friend, right? Have they mastered the basic stuff? So, one of the action items for people watching this may be this, right? Which is, let me go back and start back from the beginning and ask myself, right? Because Uh, who knows us better than we do? Well, really, not anybody, right? Other than God. So we know, right? When we sit down and we have those times of reflection. And let me say this, if you're a person out there, whoever's watching or listening to this, if you don't have some type of daily quiet time or reflection time, folks, that is an ASAP, start that right now kind of thing. That's a bonus, not included in what we had thought about really wanting to share, but I'm going to share it anyway. That's something you can do as soon as you get through watching this episode again, whether live or on replay. Is have ask yourself this question: have I mastered the fundamentals of my craft? Now, so I want to go ahead and say this. So if you are a person that is in a leadership position, you might ask, well, Vernon, what is one of the masters? What is one of the fundamentals we can look at in terms of mastering in the craft? Now, let me go ahead and share with you all one of the things that um, I thought about and had to think about and reflect on when I was an emerging, aspiring leader many, many moons ago, right? And it simply was this. Okay. Now, when I was over discipline for a school, I was also over maintenance and operations, right? So anything that happened on that whole school site, I was responsible for. Okay. All right. So I had to think about the basics: HVAC, air conditioning, plumbing, heating, all that kind of good stuff. Now, but also too, safety, security. I was over the school resource officers as well. Some interesting stories about that. Maybe we'll go ahead and share it another time. But what did I also have to think about? I had to think about the fundamentals. Watch this, great place to take notes, folks. The fundamentals of social emotional learning. Now, I'm not a licensed professional counselor. I'm not an LPC. I'm not a social worker. I'm not any of those different things. But I do know this, folks. I do know this. If people do not believe that they can trust me, and people do not believe that I will be vulnerable and authentic with them in a professional, appropriate way, then really what reason do they have to go ahead and buy into what I'm trying to do?
None.
Now, again, you want to say, well, Vernon, how can I recheck that? How can I dig deeper into that concept? We mentioned it at the beginning of the show. If you missed it, no problem. We've got you. As I often have told people over the years, repetition is our friend. Five Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. What I just described to you, not to be a spoiler alert, I'll save the rest of the book for you. But what I've just described to you is a level one leader, someone that says, please go ahead and do this. And you need to do it because of my title on my business card, on an organizational chart, or whatever my position is. That's a level one leader. Folks, let me go ahead and tell you this. Level one leaders get the ordinary done. They get compliance done. They do not get what level four and level five leaders get done. Let me also go ahead and throw in this little bonus. I feel really moved to go ahead and throw this in here since we're here in this spot. Folks, learn how to go ahead and study individuals and who they are. Now, I'll go ahead and throw this out there. Many, many years ago, I went through it as a teacher leader before I became an administrative intern back in those days. I went through Myers Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI. If any of you are out there and you're familiar with MBTI, probably have. I'm an ENFJ in the interest of self disclosure. If you've not taken Myers Briggs Type Indicator and you're saying, hey, where's a place I can go and take that maybe for free? Go to 16, the number 1616 personalities.com. 1616personalities.com all together. They'll have an assessment there. You can go ahead and take that assessment. You can have people go through that. Many years ago, I'll share this with you all, story within a story. I was at a campus and doing some consulting work and helped a campus in each one of their PLCs go through Myers Briggs Type Indicator. And can I tell you something, folks? It was powerful because people would look at me and they would say, Vernon, now I understand and I know why I do some of the things that I do. Now I understand and I know why my significant other is this way. But let me also go ahead and say this. I had some educators say, you know what, Vernon, maybe I should go ahead and share this with the people I teach so that they can better understand who I am. So when you become more in tune with your own identity and who you are, wow, folks, everyone becomes better. So we touched on those points here. And let me also go ahead and say this in terms of impact, right? And I'm going to paraphrase another influence. I said I wouldn't name influences, but I am. The late, great Dr. Martin Luther King said, life's most persistent question is, what are we doing in service to others, folks? And let me say this, and I've dedicated my life to serving and elevating and helping others achieve and reach their goals. That is a heart thing. We can all go ahead and give mental assent to that, right? Mental assent, yes. But is your heart there? Okay. Because there's some things we have to commit to in the heart that we're not committing to in the mind. Okay. And I want to go ahead and ask just a quick litmus test for folks out there. You may be giving mental assent to this. I'm sure that we have, much like you two great gentlemen here on the podcast, I'm sure that we have a lot of folks on here with 150, 160, 170 IQs. I mean, some truly brilliant people, probably members of Mensa. And that's great. We affirm that. We recognize that. We honor that. Just as well, though, their mind may be committed, but is their heart committed? Because really, folks, how much impact can you have on a greater scale if your heart is not committed? And I'll mention this one last thing. Did it on the Leadership Minute with Tom Murray. If you guys want to go ahead and see that video, just go to my Twitter page. It's the pinned video at the top of my Twitter profile. But simply, I said this with Tom Murray: 1 minute or less, connect, impact, scale, connect with folks, go ahead and find out what's important to them, find out how we can go ahead and be a part of them realizing their hopes and their dreams professionally. Number two, impact. That simply means add value. If I've added value, I've had an impact. People have asked me over the years, Mr. Wright, how do I go ahead and answer that question in a job interview? Principal Kafele did something really great when he talked about those job interview questions for assistant principals and aspiring leaders. And I would say this: over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me that, as someone who has interviewed hundreds of candidates for different things over the years, but has also obviously been on the other side of the interview table. And simply, it's this: if someone asks you, have you ever had an impact? Tell me about a time when you've made an impact. Simply, your mind's going to automatically think about, when did I add value? Let me repeat that one more time. When did I add value? How do I know, Vernon, if it's added value for a person? When a person says, you know what, thank you so much. 4 words: thank you so much. Thank you so much. If someone may also say, because there are so many different iterations they could say it or express it in, right? If someone says, wow, that's just what I needed, you helped me so much, right? The last thing is this: scale. Connect, impact were the first 2 words. Scale is the third one, right? Again, if you want to watch the video, you can see that at the top of my Twitter profile page with Tom Murray. It's the pinned video. And simply, it's scale. How we make a long lasting impact across this earth is reaching as many people as possible with the message. Thank you, guys.
There is some depth to everything you just said right there. And I'm just saying to myself, wow, absolutely, adding value. That is so important, everything that we do. I'm going to drop 2 words for you right now, but you got to do this in about 45 seconds because we have an hour show. And the depth of what you just said, man, I'm mesmerized. And it's just great stuff. I want to just talk about
Congratulations.
climate and culture really quickly and who's responsible for it in a building. Is it just the principal? Is it the whole learning community? Talk to me about that and the importance of it, and try to do that as quickly as, I don't want to say quickly. I
Yeah,
don't want you
yeah.
not to do it justice, but I want to make sure we get through a couple more questions.
Absolutely. So I want to go ahead and say this: climate starts with the principle belongs to everyone. Let me go ahead and repeat that again, folks, if you're taking notes. Starts with the principle belongs to everyone. Let me say it one more time. Repetition is our friend. Starts with the leader, starts with the principal, starts with whoever the head person is in that organization on that site, but it belongs to everyone. Because I'm going to say this, and we're going to ask you this question. We asked it a few minutes ago. If the leader doesn't have a vision, why should we expect for the people to? Let me ask that question one more time. If the leader doesn't have a vision, why should we expect for the people to? Because I'm going to tell you this, folks. Those of you that are veteran leaders, you'll have some people that'll come in and they'll say, you know what? Just tell me what to think, tell me what to do. And then you'll have some other people that are very veteran people. They have a lot of initiative, and they're very much into it. I'll share this very, very quick. When I first started doing, again, as a camp part of a campus administration team, when I first started doing teacher appraisals, and I would meet with teachers in one-on-one conferences, right? I would have some teachers that come in and say, you know what, Mr. Wright, before you get started with what you're going to go ahead and talk to me about, here are all of the things that I have outlined for myself to do. And I would sit there, in those days, and I'd be like, wow, thank you. Because you have already outlined exactly what I was going to go ahead and share with you. Those are people that have taken that really thought process. Now, so again, climate starts with the principal, belongs to the organization, but also too with the curriculum. Now, let me go ahead and say this real quick as we move on to the next thing. Notice I said starts with, doesn't belong to. Starts with the leader, doesn't belong solely to the leader, belongs to the whole group. Now, I want to say this real quick. This gets deep into SEL. We don't want to turn this into an episode of Brene Brown or Dr. Phil, but those are two great folks. Okay. But how many of you know, as you litmus test, you organizations you've been in that have not been as high performing as they could have been, typically the leaders on an SEL basis had control issues. And I'll just kind of leave that right there.
So, we're towards the end right now, and let me ask you, I like everything that you're doing on social media. So let me ask you a quick question here, a little bit tied up here on the time aspect. But let us know what your vision is, or what are your thoughts on the usage of social media? Is it a help or is it a hindrance to a campus climate and culture overall to a campus?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about climate and really culture, and those are two different things. But for right now, we'll kind of say they're synonymous because in the interest of time. But I want to go ahead and mention a few folks. Joe Sanfilippo, he talks to this often. Of course, he's known quite a bit, and there are a few other people. Tom Murray, of course, Marlon Styles, and so some of those other great names that are out there. They speak to messaging, and I want to say this, folks. Those of you, and I must go ahead and mention my friend Amber Tiemann, who used to be once upon a time in Wiley, used to be once upon a time in Garland, many, many, many years ago when we met. And she talks about this often as well. But those folks that maybe have been resistant to social media, folks, social media is a tool, that is a communication tool to reach people. Okay. Because we have people out there to reach, we have people out there to connect with, we have people out there to share value with. And so, getting back to those names that I mentioned, another friend of mine, Nicole Biscotti, she talks about that a lot, about messaging. And it's simply this, folks. We all have a message. How are we going to get it to people? Now, I spoke a couple of years ago at TCEA, and I said this because I did a session on branding for educators. What value is it if you have a great message to share about your campus and your district and nobody knows about it? Nobody can hear about it. I mean, what what we have a great message. Oh, okay. Does anybody know about it? No. Just everybody here locally in the city. Okay. And you have people out there, folks, if I may dare be this authentic, right? You have people that are out there praying, saying, if I could just find somebody that would speak to this situation to give me hope. And I said this on Tim Cavey, Teachers on Fire podcast host. I said this on his podcast some time ago. Our normal is someone else's breakthrough. Let me say that again. Our normal is someone else's breakthrough. So when we don't get on social media and we don't scale the message, again, folks, connect, impact, scale. If you missed that from a few minutes ago, connect, impact, scale. Connect with people, impact, add value, scale. How can we reach as many people as possible? That's what social media allows us to do. Folks, social media is the L word, leverage. Leverage the message. And so again, our normal may be someone else's breakthrough. So if we don't get out there and spread the message, we're not being selfless, we're being selfish.
I'll tell you something right now, Vernon. This last hour has been jam packed, filled with just things in my mind that I'm just saying yes, yes, and yes, and give me some more. They're common sense things taken to another level. And I love that because every leader should be looking for that path of evolution. So thank you so much for everything you do. Quickly for the audience out there in lieu of time, if anyone wants to get in touch with Vernon Wright, what is the best way to do that, man? Because I know that you're speaking across the country, you're writing books, you're doing things that people just in your position need to do to keep the fire burning. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. I will say this, folks. I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, or as the young folks call it, IG or the gram. Uh, and then also too on LinkedIn. So if you are on Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn, we made it simple and we made it easy. @ the right leader. TheWrightLeader. It's the same on all three channels. And also, too, as well, if you say, you know what, Vernon, wow, like the stuff that you're talking about, I want to go deeper into seeing some of the things that you've done in terms of the body of work that you have. Guess what it is, folks? The website address, therightleader.com, takes you to my link tree. You can see a lot of different things that I've had on there, including some of the other endeavors. So that's a little branding session pro tip I'll throw in as a bonus for you guys because you guys have been great, which is find a social media handle that is available across all the platforms, and then take that same social media handle and check the domain registry and see if the .com or .org is available.
Josh, what do you think of all that?
What can I say? It's a grand slam, brother. It's a grand slam.
Grand slam. It's an inside the park home run twice. There's no doubt.
All I can say is one thing. It's, you know what? Success breeds success. And you've got people that will be seeing this, that will be saying, amen, brother. And you will have people that will be seeing this like, oh my God, this is a reality. So this is awesome. Thank you for bringing what you did. And we, for sure, there has to be a part 2 down the road. We'll bring you back with some of your stories because that's how people learn. That's what history is all about. All the Hispanic, African cultures, all passed down history before writing, oral tradition. And that's exactly how we need to learn about these stories. You know what? I'm not as seasoned as my friend over there. Now that Martin Silverman has retired, he's the seasoned man of the podcast.
You're killing me, man. I'm going to be 55 next week. What does season mean? I'm only my
I don't know. I'm
year,
going to be very respectful of my elders.
Come on, you're killing me.
But you know what? Thank you for being here today. We appreciate all our guests today. Shika, Jefe, Edwin, Coach, everyone for being here. But you know what? It's not over. It is not over. This Tuesday, office hours. 20-minute problem-solving show. What would you do? What do you mean? Well, find out. I'm going to throw out something out there on the table, and you're going to let us know how you would handle it. Because you know what? Sitting in that chair is not easy. And the only way we're going to learn from these mistakes is what? From each other. Because we're stronger together. And as our guest said today, Joe Sanfilippo, go Crickets, next Sunday at this time. So join us. A bunch of fire. All thanks to the vision of that dude over there and Chris in Massachusetts. Appreciate you. Love you. What do you think about that, Dean?
You know what? I'm a humbled man, not a seasoned man, but a humbled man to be around such great people with great ideas. Listen, Vernon Wright, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Josh, as always, Sunday nights are all about getting better. Great nuggets here. If you can get a chance to retweet this, share it out, watch it again. It's all there for you anytime you want. That was what we call free PD. Listen, have a great week, everybody, and enjoy those students and be the best you can possibly be. Again, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Stay on for one moment, boys.